All right, moving on with part 2 of the reading sheet music lesson. Let's pick up where we left off and let's look at a few more things regarding notes that you'll see when reading sheet music. So here you should recognize that this is what type of note? That's right, this is a quarter note. It is filled in with color and it has a vertical staff line off of the note, therefore it's a quarter note. It doesn't have a flag or anything on it, so we know it gets one of the 4 beats. Now it won't always be the note of C, of course, so when we go up to the E note line, it's going to look the same, it's just going to be in a different location. Of course, it won't have this little line through it because we have this line representing where it needs to be. But it will have a staff line going off of it. No flag means it's a quarter note. Now you may see a similar looking note, but it will be open and not filled in with this black color. So this means it is a half note. So a half note is simply open in color and has the staff line going up. If it didn't have this staff line, we would assume that it's a whole note. But since we already have 2 notes in the measure, then the other 2 beats of the 4 beats are going to be consumed by this one note because it gets 2 beats. So the C would get 1 beat, the E would get 1 beat, and the F would get the other 2 beats to make up a total of 4 beats for the measure. Now, here we see a C with no staff line coming off of it. What does that mean? It means it's a whole note, which means it takes up the whole measure. So in this case, there's 4 beats to a measure, so this note would be played for 4 total beats, taking up the entirety of that measure. Now, in some cases, you'll see 2 half notes. Each one of those gets 2 of the beats to take up the full 4 beats of the measure. One note gets 2 beats, the second note gets the other 2 beats. Now, you may see a quarter note. Again, this has the long staff. It's a black filled in note, so that's a quarter note, a quarter note, a quarter note, and then a quarter note. So you can have 4 different notes within the same measure, each of them taking up one of the 4 beats. So you'll see all different types of combinations of these notes. I do also want to point out that there are times when you will see notes in the bass clef as well. This simply means those notes would be played according to their markings. So what would happen here is we would play the G with the left hand, and we would play that note and hold it for 4 counts while we're playing C at the same time. So we would press the C and the G down at the same time. The C, however, would only get 1 beat, where the G gets all 4 beats. So the G is held out while you're playing C, E, and then F, and hold F for 2 beats. So there's going to be different combinations of things happening as you're playing songs. The same thing, let me move myself out of the way here. You would see in this case we have on the right hand 4 quarter notes, and they change notes every beat of the measure. And down here on the left hand we would play C and hold it for 2 beats, and then play the A and hold it for 2 beats. So you have 2 different things going on with your 2 different hands. So sometimes it takes a lot of coordination. I'm not that great at it, to be honest with you, and I'm still learning. But that's simply part of what you have to deal with when you're reading sheet music and playing according to the notes that are on the page. All right, moving on. I want to point out a couple of things here that you're going to be exposed to at some point along the line. And we've talked already about quarter notes and eighth notes. There's 2 ways that eighth notes can appear. They can have little individual flags hanging off the staff. And if you see that, that means it gets an eighth of a beat. But if we have a bunch of them clustered together like this, it is easier many times when writing music and also reading music, because it can get pretty cluttered, to simply express that with a beam that goes across from the first note to the last. So whether you see a single flag or a beam that spans 4 or 3 notes or however many notes there are, you are to consider those eighth notes. Now, as you graduate to more difficult music, you will see notes that have 2 flags hanging off of it, or 2 beams connecting them together. So we already talked about what the 2 flags mean. The 2 flags means it gets half the value of the note that has a 1 flag. So if 1 flag is an eighth note, that means 2 flags are 16th notes. And you can express those again with the beams that go across the multiple notes just to make it look a little cleaner and easier to read and sometimes easier to write as you're creating music. Going on down the chart here, we see there are times where you have 3 flags that hang off of the staff or 3 beams that go across. So instead of being 16th notes, yes, those would be 32nd notes, and those would be played super fast. Same thing with these, the 64th notes, and that's really quick on the keyboard. It's like pressing them very, very, very fast. You have to do 64 of them. If you were to fill up a whole measure, you would have to play 64 notes in the time it would take you to count 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a lot of tapping. For every one beat, you would play that note 16 times. That's pretty insane for me. I doubt I'll ever get to that level to be able to play that fast. But this is what it would look like with beams and the flags hanging off of those notes. So now you're familiar with all the different types of flags associated with the notes that you're going to see on sheet music.